Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing the next up in my line of deity builds. We are building a Chosen of Tempus. Now, for those of you that don't know, Tempus, from my research, is a god of war, a rather chaotic entity. But he's interesting because he's a rather chaotic entity, but he also has a strict set of morals. Basically, he is a god of war, like I said, and he would fight in a lot of battles. He is a hulking man whose face is obscured by his helmet and rides into battle on his, massive warhorse. He essentially would fight with an army one day and then fight against them the next, only living for like bloodshed, money, and war. But he would never fight dishonorably. He was a chaotic entity, but he had a strict code of morals, basically saying that he would fight an opponent one-on-one, always fight them fairly, and he would absolutely detest cowardice. And I found this to be a really, really interesting concept for a deity, and as well as a deity build. So I and the kind of followers of Tempus, the Foe Hammer, which I have kind of based this character on here, were basically religious kind of fighters, so kind of battle clerics and perhaps even paladins, at least in my interpretation, which kind of, their tenets and their religious following was literally the art of war. These guys were such impressive battle tacticians, strategists, and soldiers that their literal religion was the art of war, as they followed in the footsteps of Tempus. And I found that to be really, really interesting. So the way I've kind of built this character thematically is definitely a kind of a holy warrior turned mercenary who still practices and adheres to their religious doctrine and follows the art of war, but is also willing to kind of be bought, I suppose. They sell their mercenary services and travel around, Faerun as a hired sword with a lot of impressive skills. And I really, really like that as a character concept. I also see this person in kind of the following of Tempus being a fully armored kind of knight look here, which I've kind of gone for. And I don't know, it just felt like a really interesting character concept to me. And as with this build, this is kind of a build request as well, because while I was going to do Tempus quite soon because I liked the idea of him, this was actually a build request to make a Paladin of Tempus, which is what I've decided to go with here. But because I'm making this build of Paladin, I actually get to do a really interesting combination of classes that I've always wanted to try, and so I'm quite thankful for that. So thank you for the request, and, well, thank you all for tuning in, I guess. I won't bloat this anymore, let's get into the build. As I stated, we are going to be starting off as a Paladin. This is going to give us all the weapon and armor proficiencies that we want, and it's also going to give us a good set of skills, as well as letting us choose our subclass. Now, there's not really like an Oath of War subclass, I guess, so you can really pick your favorite here. It doesn't really affect the build overall, but we're definitely going to be I'm going to be personally taking the Oath of Vengeance, just because it gets some spells that I like, particularly Misty Step later on, and it also is one of the hardest oaths to break accidentally. However, I would not say that Oathbreaker is entirely out of the question here. In fact, it could actually be rather interesting, so feel free to go Oathbreaker if you want. I don't really like using Oathbreaker in videos because obviously I actually show the character creation screen as a visual, and you can't respec an Oathbroken character, so I wouldn't be able to do that. I do want to do Oathbreaker builds in the future, but definitely the kind of technical bullshit you have to go through with that definitely makes me kind of steer away from it a bit, but definitely any oaths is going to work with this build. As for our ability scores, I've got a decent spread here. 16 in strength and constitution. We are going to be a frontline fighter, which means that our strength and our constitution are going to be our highest stats for sure. And I also want wisdom and charisma for our spellcasting abilities that we're going to be getting, which means dumping intelligence and dexterity. Now, that low dexterity score is probably raising some red flags for a few of you. However, as you might have been able to guess, we are going to be mitigating this with an item. Because this build is multi-ability score dependent, I kind of had to use a decent stat boosting item here, and it's going to be the Gloves of Dexterity. So this will get fixed, but obviously you can bump this up to maybe 10 or 12 and then respec once you get the gloves, but honestly, this is still a decent stat spread since we're going to be using heavy armor with this build regardless, so our dexterity is not as important, and like I say, we're going to be using an item to bump it up anyway. As for our proficiencies, I've gone with the soldier background here, so we're getting athletics and intimidation, but I also quite like having persuasion, insight, and religion, because I feel like that just makes sense overall. And with our second level, I do want to take a quick dip over to Cleric here. This is going to be our other subclass that we're going to be using here, our main sort of multi-class here, but I do just want to get one level of it quickly before we go into our back to Paladin to level that up and get extra attack and such. So we've got our Cleric level here, and we're going to be getting some cantrips. We're not really going to be a spellcaster with this build. I do not, despite us taking two classes that can spellcast, I do not see this as a spellcasting build. I feel like any spells we do get are either just going to bump up our martial abilities or just bump up our dialogue-based abilities. So we're taking the dialogue cantrips here, as I call them, being Thaumaturgy, Guidance, and Resistance. I mean, Resistance kind of isn't a dialogue cantrip, but there are dialogue things where you have to make a saving throw, so I count it. As for our subclass, I mean, this should be bloody obvious. We're going War. I mean, it would be extremely stupid of me not to. This means we're going to be getting Divine Favor and Shield of Faith automatically added to our spell list. And also we're going to be getting a subclass feature called War Priest. When you make an unarmed weapon attack, you can spend a War Priest charge to make an additional attack as a bonus action. If I understand correctly, you start off with 3 of these, and you can basically spend this charge to make an additional attack as a bonus action, as I've said, and you recover those charges every long rest. So technically at level 1, you're getting 3 extra attacks per day, which is pretty good. It makes delaying extra attack from Paladin by a level less painful, because you are still kind of getting it. So, and obviously it fits on theme, but it's also just a really good thing to have for this build, so we want to grab this here. We'll also get to pick a deity here, and obviously we are going Tempus. This means we're going to be getting any Tempus-related dialogue, which is super, super fun. Next up, we're going to get 2 spells, and again, I don't really see this as a spellcasting build, even though we are taking spellcasting classes, and because I really don't think that, like, Tempus, someone who would want to engage their enemies in combat one-on-one, would really, like, approve of the use of a lot of spells, especially not spells like Command or perhaps, like, Inflict Wounds, as they will probably feel quite cheap, but I don't know, perhaps he just was like a win by any means necessary, but he seemed to have a pretty solid moral code, so I'm kind of just interpreting him as, like, a face me in one-on-one combat and prove better or worse, basically, type of deal. Like an honorable duelist, I'll say. So I'm actually going to just suggest we take these 2 spells. There's Bless, which will allow us to bless up to 3 creatures. I don't know why I picked Bane. I meant to pick something else. Bless up to 3 creatures, again, a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws, basically just being able to bump up your allies a bit. And as for your second spell, again, you can kind of take whatever you want. I mean, we don't exactly have the highest wisdom, so a lot of our offensive spells aren't really going to work. I would recommend Sanctuary, but I actually do think it kind of goes against the thing of Tempus again, because I feel like using Sanctuary in a fight does seem a bit dishonorable if you kind of abuse it as you can. But maybe you could word this as, instead of, you know, you literally calling on divine magic to make yourself invincible, you just become an absolute bulwark of defense, putting your shield in front of you and making yourself impossible to hit. Actually, now that I've said that, that actually feels quite thematic, if you kind of flavor it that way. So yeah, let's go with Sanctuary. I feel like it's a good spell to have. Right, next up at total level 3, like I said, we're going to be jumping straight back over to Paladin, because now we're going to be getting our Divine Smites. We're also going to be getting a fighting style at this level, and I have personally built this character as a sword and board type, using a longsword and a shield, so I'm going to be going with dueling here to give my weapon 2 additional damage. But if you wanted to do a like 2-handed build with this, you could go great weapon fighting. It's really up to you, but I wanted to build a sword and shield character, so I've gone with dueling. We're also going to get to prepare 4 spells here, and I absolutely think Compelled Duel is an amazingly on-theme and cool choice for this build, basically goading an enemy into attacking you, literally challenging them to a duel, and then being able to fight them one-on-one. It costs a bonus action, it feels extremely fun, and I really, really like it. I'm also going to suggest taking the 3, well, I'm going to say Thunderous Smite, for sure. Pushes your target 3 meters away and possibly knocks it prone. This is the one kind of smite spell that actually doesn't take your concentration, and the ability to push targets while doing a little bit of extra damage is quite nice, and it kind of can be flavored as you just hitting your target so hard that they go flying back, rather than it being something inherently magical, but it's up to you if you want to flavor it that way. I also recommend heroism. I feel like somebody like this is going to be stalwart and on the front line of the battlefield, so having something that makes you immune to makes yourself immune to frightened and gives you 5 temporary hit points per turn seems really good to me, and I quite like it. As for the rest of your spells, you can take really whatever you like. Searing Smite is a decent option. Wrathful Smite, which also can work, but again, these two require your concentration, and we are going to be getting some interesting concentration-based spells that I don't really want breaking all the time, so maybe don't pick these ones up. But something like Shield, well, we already get Shield of Faith from Cleric, so even though that seems like a good option, I wouldn't really take it here. So just to kind of stay on theme, I'm going to take Protection from Evil and Good, basically giving you the ability to protect yourself or an ally against the attacks of aberrations, creatures, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. Basically, the target cannot be charmed, frightened, or possessed by them, and when those creatures attack it, they have disadvantage. This is just going to be an extra spell to boost up your tankiness against certain types of foes. Let's keep going. Next up at Paladin level 3, we're going to be getting some class and subclass features. Our main class feature is Divine Health, meaning we cannot be diseased. I don't know if this ever comes up in Baldur's Gate 3, but who knows. We're also going to be getting 2 really cool subclass actions, being Abjure Enemy, which means we can frighten an enemy, and they have disadvantage on ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. Vow of Enmity, gain advantage on attack rolls against an enemy for 10 turns using a Channel Overcharge. These both take Channel Overcharges, and they are super interesting and fun abilities. I quite like Abjure Enemy here just because it's like, I know Tempus detested cowardice, but how can you not be afraid when something that powerful is staring you down? I just kind of liked that moral code paradox, we'll call it. We're also going to get 2 Oath spells, which gives us Bane and Hunter's Mark. So we're going to get Bane anyway, and I mean, it's Bane. I kind of just prefer Bless overall. But Hunter's Mark is really good. Being able to use your bonus action to mark a creature and deal additional weapon damage feels super on theme for this build, and I quite like having it. So Oath of Vengeance does feel pretty good for this kind of concept. We're also going to get an extra spell at this level. Take whatever you like. I mean, I don't see anything wrong since, you know, these followers of Tempest are literally kind of cleric fighters. Having a healing spell or 2 doesn't seem too on theme, but I feel like Tempest would actually probably detest healing during combat. So I feel like healing outside of combat is fine, but I feel like if you wanted to kind of stay on character, maybe don't heal during combat, but I honestly don't know. I mean, this is just my interpretation of Tempest. I could be wrong. But then people correct me, and it fuels the algorithm, so hey-ho. Anyways, we're now a Paladin level 4, which means we get to pick our first feat. And when I design these builds, I like to find some sort of kind of unique mechanic to kind of use with them, and I kind of like this one. So normally I would say go for an ability score improvement to bump your strength up to 18. However, I think we can kind of supplement this by grabbing the Potion of Everlasting Vigor at the start of Act 2. And bumping up our strength to 18 that way, so definitely want to pick that up and use that here. But I would actually say that as a cool thematic theme that can kind of change the way you play this build in an interesting way, I actually suggest the Sentinel feat. Because we're playing a character that is going to have high AC, this kind of feels interesting. So, when an enemy within melee range attacks an ally, you can use a reaction to make a weapon attack against that enemy. The target ally cannot also have this feat. You gain advantage on opportunity attacks, and when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, it can no longer move for the rest of the turn. The way I kind of picture this character is, yes, they are this mercenary, holy fighter type person, but I also think they would also be an extremely interesting battle kind of commander or battle strategist in dicey situations. I can see them kind of instructing the rest of the party to get behind their shield and form kind of a formation, a way to stay together and have solid positioning and being able to use their different strengths while also benefiting and covering each other's weaknesses. So I can see this party maybe consisting of this build being the frontline tank and fighter, with a mage character that stands next to this character, in which case if anybody tries to attack the mage, they basically get eviscerated by the Sentinel, because they make an attack against against the mage, then the tank retaliates, and this build retaliates, and so forth and so on. And I feel like that is actually a really interesting concept. So pairing this with kind of a mage build would be really, really fun. Also, you could kind of pair this with maybe like a rogue who kind of stands behind the fighter and gets in their sneak attacks using advantage because you have 2 allies next to an enemy, and you could also go with it that way. Or you could have another cleric behind you who is doing healing, and so they're being protected by this feat. Like, this, both thematically and kind of gameplay-wise, it's such a unique and interesting feature, and it would be kind of interesting to play with, like, this idea that you're all kind of grouped up together. Yes, you do get eviscerated by a spell like Fireball, but maybe if you have, maybe your wizard who is in the party is an abjuration wizard, using their arcane ward on the whole party, that becomes less problematic. I definitely feel like this is one of those builds that you could maybe combine with my other builds to really do something interesting. But anyways, I want to take the Sentinel feat here for the reasons I've described, and you can definitely take it at this level without losing too much if you get the Potion of Everlasting Vigor. But anyways, I'm quite happy with this feat, so let's move on. Next up at Paladin level 5, we're finally getting our main extra attack, and we're going to also be getting some other spells. Now, at this point, the game's already selected a really good one here. Aid is an amazing spell. It's going to let you buff up the whole team to have extra hit points. Definitely worth grabbing. And obviously, Branding Smite, giving us a really powerful kind of way to use Branding Smite on ranged weapons, because we are going to be using a bow with this build as well. I feel like this character is just an overall weapon master, and so having Branding Smite to be able to use smites at range and make it so enemies can't turn invisible is really, really fun. Yes, this one costs our concentration, but I feel like if you really want to get that powerful attack off at range, and because this build has limited mobility, and you can't really get close to enemies if they're really far away, this is going to give you the option to do a decent chunk of damage at ranged. This was the main focus of my Holy Archer build, and it's nice to finally be able to incorporate that concept into a fully realized build. So, yeah. Now, next up at total level 7, we're going to be dipping back over to War Cleric, because yes, that class combination that I've always wanted to use is Paladin and War Cleric, because really, thematically and mechanically, they work really well together, other than being multi-ability score dependent. But if you don't care about the main spellcasting ability of one or the other, which we don't in this case, you can manage it a bit better. So I really, really like mixing this with War Cleric. So what do we get at level 2? Well, we're going to be getting Turn Undead like all clerics do, but we're also going to be getting our Channel Divinity feature, which is Guided Strike. Tempus himself is going to guide your hand as you strike your enemy's weak point, which gives you a +10 bonus to your attack roll. This is fun. I like it thematically. Only get it really once per short rest, I believe these recover on. Yep. So, but still, it can really help you get that important hit when you need it. Next up, we're also going to be getting our Cleric spells. I think we're going to keep Sanctuary and Bless. There's no reason to get rid of these. And like I said, I'm pretty sure we already had Shield of Faith, but I'm going to take it here just because it's being a bit funny, and I don't know why it's not showing up. But I could be wrong here, so fiddle around with this and choose whatever you feel like is appropriate. Next up at Cleric level 3, we're going to be getting some level 2 spells, including Magic Weapon and Spiritual Weapon. So these are two quite useful spells that we're going to be getting added to our spell list as extras for 3, which means we don't have to prepare them. And speaking of prepared spells, we've got a few different interesting options here, and I'm actually going to suggest you grab Enhance Ability. This is just a really, really cool spell that I absolutely slept on for the longest time, and since this is just about enhancing our just our regular martial and other kind of body, physical abilities, this is just a really cool thing to have that is super on theme for this build. I really, really like it. I'm also going to recommend Calm Emotions here. This I feel like is a little bit thematic, because the thing about Tempus is that he hated needless bloodshed, which again seems a bit strange when you think about someone who is so chaotic that he could turn on his own army at any moment, but it does kind of make sense that if there's no reason to fight someone, that he wouldn't. So if some person who comes up to you who has absolutely no chance of winning against you, but is like in maybe like a drunken fury or something, like having Calm Emotions kind of seems on theme. But if you don't really think that that's the case, I would also recommend Warding Bond, as we're playing kind of a tanking build that kind of, takes hits for their party. Having Warding Bond to give an ally resistance to all damage, a +1 to their armor class and saving throws, is really, really cool, but it comes with the caveat that you take the damage that they take. But again, since they get resistance and stuff, it's not going to be that much, but still, I do feel like this is an on-theme kind of spell, but I do think Calm Emotions is a unique option that also works. Next up at Cleric level 4, we're going to be getting another feat, and at this point, I do think it's safe to just take an ability score improvement here. You could bump your strength all the way up to 18 to give you a total of 20 with the potion, which would land you in pretty decent territory for doing damage, and is probably what I would personally pick. But if you feel like you're running a little bit short in the HP department, bumping up your constitution or taking the tough feat is a good way to kind of bring that up. But yeah, or you could take another feat here. There's a few interesting things. Perhaps if you're going with a two-handed build, you could go for Great Weapon Master. Heavy Armor Master could also be a good option. It gives you a little bit of extra strength. Maybe combined with Ethel's Boon, that would bump it up to 20 and could be really powerful. And it allows you to be even more tanky. But I'm just going to take the ability score improvement for simplicity's sake, but feel free to experiment with this one, as well as a few other things. We also get another cantrip at this level. I'll take Blade Ward just because it's again bumping up our martial abilities and makes us a bit tankier. Very much on theme. We're also going to get another spell at this level. I would say Prayer of Healing is a pretty good option. If you're out of short rest, this can be a clutch option, although you probably aren't going to use this one that much, simply because you're going to be spending your spell slots on Divine Smites quite a bit. Next up at Cleric level 5, we're going to be getting level 3 spells, including, automatically added to our list, is Spirit Guardians. This is a really, really cool concentration spell to have. It's one of the most powerful spells in the game, period. And you can really, and it's just going to give you a bit of extra tankiness, as enemies are going to have a harder time getting to you, and also getting to your allies if they are hiding behind you, if you're using this kind of bulwark defense strategy. So it's really nice on theme, and I quite like it. Also, Crusader's Mantle, giving all of your nearby allies an additional 1 to 4 radiant damage on their weapon attacks. So if you are playing with that, or your allies stay close strategy, this can also work and be on theme. This build is very, very thematic, and I love it. Also we get level 3 spells at this point. Nothing here really speaks to me. But I do quite like Protection from Energy, again playing into that tanky aspect. Touch a creature to guarantee resistance to one of these elemental types of damage. So this can be yourself, and if you're up against an enemy that does a specific damage type quite well, you can allow yourself to become resistant to it and tank even further at the cost of your concentration. I think this is actually a pretty interesting option for this build, and I quite like it. So we'll take it. Now, at this point, you have some options. You can either push to Paladin 7 for the aura, Cleric 7 for more spell slots and extra features, or you can do what I'm going to do here and take a couple of levels of Fighter. Because Fighter is going to give us another fighting style, and we're going to be taking Archery. Again, we do use a bow on this build, so having a little bit of extra chance to hit with them is nice. And obviously, again, I just show these classes one after the other. If you feel like you wanted to maybe go Paladin 5, maybe Cleric 1, Fighter 2, and then go the rest of the way Cleric after that, you could go for that, and it's probably a powerful way to do this build. But I'm just showing off the classes kind of in order here, but play around with it as much as you like. But I do like taking 2 levels of Fighter here, but again, if you just want to stay with either of the 2 classes we've chosen, go right ahead. You might even just want to go, like, all the way Paladin and just take, like, maybe 2 levels of Cleric, if you just care about the... if you don't really care about the spellcasting and just want those little bit of bonus attack sort of options. But anyway, we're taking Archery here, like I said, just for that little bit of extra with our bow hits. And finally, at Fighter level 2, we're going to be getting Action Surge, which is going to let us do a big Nova round of melee damage, going in on smites with Action Surge and extra attack, and our bonus action extra attack. We're going to be able to do a lot of attacking and a lot of damage. Okay, and that is the build. Overall, quite proud of this one. I feel like it has a really strong theme, sticks close at least to my interpretation of the deity, and gives you a lot of unique and interesting options. And it's quite nice to build what I think is kind of like a really decent tank. I mean, obviously, if you wanted to go full in on the tanking aspect and you really didn't care about the, the spellcasting levels, maybe drop some of your Cleric levels and get 3 levels of Barbarian to take the Wild Heart and get resistance to all damage types. However, I still quite like this build, but as it is. However, perhaps that barbarian option as a tank might be stronger overall. But it's also kind of nice to build a tank without using that feature, even though I haven't even used that feature in a build yet. But anyways, I'm rambling. Let's get into the equipment. So I've got an interesting showcase of equipment here. I've got all of these that can be obtained around kind of Act 2, and also some stuff that you can grab in Act 3 to kind of give your build a bit of a buff. So let's have a look at the items. First of all, oh god, I can't speak today. First of all, the Hellgloom helmet. Now, this is not actually what this item is called in-game. I'm pretty sure this is an early access kind of name for this helmet. That got changed in the full release, but the mod that I used to add this equipment to my inventory uses this name. This is actually the Flawed Helldusk helmet. Again, if there's any confusion here, just check the description of this video, as I do put wiki links to all the items that I use, and that will tell you how to get them in the description. So just know that any time it says Hellgloom, it actually means Flawed Helldusk. So with the Flawed Helldusk helmet, we're going to gain magical durability. The wielder gains a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells, and also gains a buff to their constitution saving throws. Pretty darn good, but however, when you get to Act 3, I would replace this with the Helm of Baldur. If you know what you're doing, you can get this without fighting anything right at the start of Act 3, and it's one of the most broken single pieces of armor in the game. I used it on my Dante build way back in the day, and it is just super, super strong. First of all, Baldur's Vitality. The helmet heals you for 2 hit points at the beginning of every turn. Second, Baldur's Favor. You have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws. 3, you gain stun immunity, and 4, you gain immunity to critical hits. Again, the single most busted helmet option in the game, by far, no question. Maybe the Warped Headband of Intellect is in competition for it, but only in certain builds, whereas basically any build that has at least medium armor proficiency would get a ton of use out of this, and it's a Marshal's best friend, easily. My only kind of complaint about it is, at the very least, compared to the Flawed Helldusk helm, it kind of looks bad. So if you want to play more into the whole Tempest thing of hiding your face in your helmet, maybe stick with this one. But honestly, the Helm of Baldur is so good that I can go against the theming a little bit here and just hide it to have a really kind of badass looking character with a cool helmet with cool abilities. Also, I'm really proud of this character's like facial design. They look awesome in my opinion. But I digress. Anyways. Next up is the Cloak of Protection. Since we're tanking, we want as high AC as possible, and having a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws is always good, but you can replace this with something else if you like it, but honestly this is one of the better options in my opinion. Next up, the Flawed Helldusk armor. Again, it says Hellgloom, but I've explained this. This has 18 armor class at base, which is really, really good. And when you are hit by a foe within 2 meters, they may take 1 to 4 fire damage, just like a chance of it. This has superior plate, meaning you take a little bit less piercing damage, although you do have disadvantage on stealth checks. This is a really decent armor set that is quite easy to get in Act 2. You just have to give a certain vendor a certain item and they will make it for you for free. And that item is pretty easy to find if you know where to look. However, when you get to Act 3, I think the Armor of Persistence is a really good shot here. It's still an amazing looking piece of kit, and is going to give you a bunch of cool stuff. It's 20 base armor class. You can buy this from a vendor as soon as you start Act 3. Really, really easy to get. All incoming damage is reduced by 2, playing into the tanking aspect. You gain resistance and Blade Ward, meaning now you kind of get that Barbarian Rage kind of resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And also you get a bonus to your saving throws through resistance being always up. You still take a disadvantage to stealth checks, but come on, you're in full plate mail. I mean, you're not going to be stealthing. Next up is the Gloves of Dexterity. This can be obtained right at the start of Act 2. Although people keep telling me the Githyanki Crash is an Act 1 thing. Yes, you are technically correct. However, if you go there early, you forego the Emerald Grove questline, which is why I consider it Act 2. But seriously though, this is amazing. Since we're multi-ability score dependent, like I said, just being able to set our Dexterity score to 18 immediately is awesome. It also gives us a +1 bonus to our attack and damage, so definitely worth grabbing this one. Also obtained in Act 2 are the Evasive Shoes. It just gives us a +1 to our armor class and a little bit to our acrobatics, but we're mainly here for the armor class. Again, for tanking, this is just a solid, easy to get option in Act 2. However, once you get to Act 3, I recommend swapping to the Boots of Persistence in order to be able to gain freedom of movement and Long Strider, basically making it so you cannot be stopped by difficult terrain or any other status effects that would impede your movement, and you also get to move a bit further with Long Strider. Definitely a really badass looking, powerful combination. this is just an awesome looking build. This is one of my favorite looking builds I've made. Next up, onto the weapons. We have the Blackguard Sword. Now, this is a sword that is obtained in Act 3, and you do have to beat a particularly powerful set of enemies to be able to get it. However, it is one of the better +2 longswords in the game for Paladins. Basically, it gives you an extra 2 slashing damage, an extra 1d4 necrotic damage, and on a successful hit with one of your smites, so this can be Divine Smite or one of these smite spells, the target must succeed a Constitution saving throw or become dazed. For those of you that don't know, dazed essentially means that the target has disadvantage on wisdom saving throws and can't take reactions, and they lose the dexterity bonus of their armor class. So overall, it's a really powerful option. It's a +2 weapon. Again, you do have to go through quite a lot to get it, but up until this point, just use any versatile weapon that suits your fancy, or one-handed weapon that you find. Just kind of check, like Fowler Alluve could work, although not thematically, because apparently Elistray and Tempus were kind of butting heads quite a bit because they have kind of opposing ideals. But basically any decent longsword, perhaps even if at the very start of Act 3 you can get the Sword of the Emperor, which is quite good. It's a +2 longsword there that you could use until you get this. But I really wanted to show off this sword because I think it's one of the better looking swords in the game, and it has a lot of abilities that synergize really well with this build. So I really wanted to show it off here, but like I said, basically just kind of use any versatile weapon you can find up until this point. Something like even a spear could be good, or there's like warhammers and such that you could use, which might even look a bit cooler if that's your persuasion. Play around with this one, but yeah, I definitely quite like the Blackguard Sword here. This is the Shield of Scorching Reprisal. This can be obtained in Act 2 off of a certain corpse. You're going to want to follow the wiki guide on this one because this one's a little bit hidden away, but it's still quite easy to get if you know what to do. Basically, this is going to give you the standard Shield Bash. It grants resistance to fire damage, and you also get to use the ability Blazing Retaliation once per short rest. Basically, what this does is it lets you huddle behind your shield to increase your armor class by 1, and reap the Scorching Retaliation upon the attackers who miss you. When an attacker misses you with a melee attack, they take 1 to 6 fire damage. You cast this as a bonus action, and like I say, it's once per short rest. This is quite a fun little ability that feels like again, it's on theme because you're getting a little buff to your armor class, making it a total of 25 of all the gear we've got equipped now, and then you can also do a little bit of fire damage to anyone who misses. However, if once you get into Act 3, you can, and you beat a certain boss, you can get the best shield in the game, in my opinion, Vicona's Walking Fortress. What this essentially does is it's going to give you a Rebuke of the Mighty. When a foe hits you with a melee attack, I like how it's kind of going off screen there, you can use your reaction, dealing 2 to 8 force damage to knock it prone unless they succeed at dex save. You also gain Spell Guard. You gain advantage on saving throws against spells. Spell attack rolls against you have disadvantage. You also gain 2 abilities. You get the Warding Bond ability for free, being able to cast it once per long rest, which is on theme for this build as well. But you're also going to be able to get Reflective Shell, a protective shell that envelops you and reflects any projectiles targeted at you back to the point of origin. So remember when I said that our strategy of all being bunched up together kind of gets annihilated by Fireball? Well, with this, that fireball goes bouncing back, and all of a sudden that's not as much of a problem anymore. Also, fun fact about this ability, in early access, Reflective Shell was a tadpole ability, but it got removed and placed onto this shield because it was so powerful. But yeah, I really like this shield, and I feel like with the right coloring, you could make this like really awesome. Hang on a second, like we could actually make this an interesting color combination. We're doing a live experiment, folks, here. Let's have a look. Maybe... Oh, there's some that kind of turn it gold. We tried Lush Burgundy. Hold on. That's not as good as I thought it would look, but you get the point. Or maybe a bit of red on the cape. Maybe that would make it look better. Oh, actually, hang on. It's coming together now. Oh, we need to put the burgundy on the boots as well. Hold on. I know this is a tangent, but I want to show... I like fashion. Yes, actually, that's looking pretty good. You're like a golden warrior now. Maybe we can make the helm even look kind of decent as well. Well, actually, that already kind of matches, but let's actually put on the Lush Burgundy and see what happens. Actually, you know what? That is growing on me a bit. Maybe still not the helmet, but it's definitely a cool look, actually. Like a mid-build kind of fashion transformation. Oh, I forgot one thing. The bow. We're using the Titan String Bow. This does an additional... This is a +1 weapon. Oh, I just realized the +2 piercing comes from our...
dueling feat, doesn't it? Not the yeah, not the weapon. My apologies, I misspoke. The Titan String Bow. This weapon deals additional damage equal to your strength modifier. So we're going to be getting damage from our dex and our strength modifiers here, which are both going to be +4, meaning this bow does a total of 8 additional damage, which is super, super cool. It doesn't show up in the tooltip, but trust me, it does do this. So yeah, this is just a nice and decent option that works well with a strength and dex build, so definitely want to pick this up. If you care less about being able to do damage and want something like the Dark Fire Shortbow to gain extra resistances and haste, that can also work. Or you could go for something like the Gaunter Mail from Act 3 to get haste as well, but also have a +3 legendary bow, if you would rather go that route. But I quite like the Titan String Bow here, as it does do a lot of damage, and is easier to get as it appears in Act 2. But yeah, that is the build. Quite a lot of fun building this one, actually. I appreciate the request to kind of turn this build into a, you know, kind of a, like a Paladin, because I think I would have probably just gone War Cleric myself and kind of made like a Battle Mage healer, but then the kind of idea of being a Sentinel-based tank came to mind, and I just could not get away from that concept. It just seemed so cool to me. So the idea of this, like, kind of character being this hardened battle warrior that turned mercenary that knows how to use strategic fighting tactics to give themselves an advantage and literally gets their allies to hide behind their shields and do team-based attacks and strategies. It just seems super, super awesome, really cool, on theme, and I quite enjoyed building it and kind of working with it. Again, my interpretation of Tempus may not be 100% accurate, but it was just what I got from reading the Forgotten Realms wiki. But again, I could be completely wrong, so feel free to correct me. You know, those comments fuel the algorithm, as I've very openly stated. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for me. My next build is going to be my next Halloween build that I've been releasing every weekend during the month of October. And while I don't want to spoil exactly what this build is, because I think it's going to be a nice surprise, and it is going to kind of roll around into like my 1000 sub special, because I have a feeling it's going to be the longest video I've ever made, because it is a full party build. I do plan on doing a dedicated video for 1000 subscribers, and my kind of idea that I'm thinking of doing for that is actually doing a video that shows how I make my build videos. So, like, going through the process of, like, the creative process of making a build. And I feel like that could be an interesting topic to go through for people who actually want to have a go at making these builds themselves, but aren't quite sure where to get started. But let me know. So, kind of like 2 kind of special videos to kind of celebrate 1000. I'm not sure exactly if my next Halloween build is going to come out on Saturday or Sunday. It depends on how long it takes to make. These full party builds do take a lot longer, as I have to figure out the levels, equipment, and overall kind of way of doing it, as well as using a certain exploit to be able to get 4 player created characters in a single campaign. But once that's all set up, I've got them all leveled up, geared up, and ready to go. It's going to be worth it. So like I say, it could come out Saturday, it could come out Sunday. It depends on how busy I am. But I really, really hope you guys enjoy it, because it's quite a special build to me, because the build in question is kind of representing a big part of my childhood. But overall, I really, really do hope you guys will enjoy that. And yeah, I'll stop rambling now. Hopefully the combat footage has shown enough of this build, and yeah, I will see you all next time.